So now that we have a purchase contract that's agreed upon by the buyer and the seller, we're now ready for the next step, which is the opening escrow. All this means is that one of the parties, usually the buyer, but either party can email the title company who's handling the transaction, the purchase contract and all the related documents therein, and the title company will use those documents as their instructions. So overall, the title company is a neutral third party to the transaction between the buyer and the seller. They're not working for the buyer, they're not working for the seller. They basically work for both of them, but they don't have any allegiance to either. So if the buyer and the seller have any issues as we move through the transaction, such as if the buyer thinks that the seller's breached the contract, then the buyer can contact the escrow company and they could potentially cancel the contract and request the earnest deposit as damages. And the title company will use the purchase contract as their instructions to determine if that in case did happen, and if so, if the buyer does have a right to the earnest deposit. And it can obviously work either way. Another thing the title company does is they will contact the HOA and request a set of documents that we refer to as the HOA demand. These documents tell us how much the HOA dues are, how often they're paid, if there's any open HOA violations, how much the fees are to sell a property within that HOA, because they do vary between all HOAs, and if there's any current outstanding HOA dues owed by the seller, which will need to be paid by the close of escrow. Another thing that the title company will do, usually right after we open, is they'll contact the seller and they'll ask them to complete some type of seller identity form. And it just kind of makes sure that the seller is who they say they are. It'll also ask them what mortgages they have on the property and the name of the mortgage company, the account numbers. Because another thing the title company is going to do is before we close escrow, they're going to contact the mortgage company and they're going to ask how much the payoff is. So we know down to the penny what is owed on the day that we close escrow, so they can pay the loan off on behalf of the seller during that process. Another thing the title company does is they will do a title search. So this is basically them doing a search in the chain of the title, which means they look in the history as to every time ownership of that house has changed, just to make sure there's no issues and there's no outlying issues or possibilities that someone might claim that, hey, this property was mine and it was sold out from underneath me, a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, things of that nature. You will also have to buy title insurance, which will protect you against that type of issue moving forward. One of the last things the title company does is when we get ready to close escrow, they will handle the recording of the deed, which is the actual document that changes the ownership from the seller to the buyer. So in order to close escrow, the actual definition of closing escrow is the recording of that specific deed with the county's office. Once that deed is recorded, that means we have officially closed escrow.